Welcome back to another edition of the Musketeer Report podcast. Today is Monday, December 1st. Xavier is 5-3 overall. The Musketeers are 3-1 since the back-to-back losses to Santa Clara and Iowa, and they're coming off an 88-67 win over Texas A&M Corpus Christi. They are currently ranked 83rd in KenPom. Today's show, we're going to talk about those last four games, that 3-1 stretch, because they've been playing much better basketball since that started. We'll also talk about the players that have stood out and the job the coaches have done. And then I'll bring on Paul Fritschner to get his take on all of that, as well as how the Big East is shaping up for the Musketeers. I will let you know that we're recording this on Monday prior to the St. Francis game, quite frankly, because I just don't really think the St. Francis game matters at all. They're one of the worst teams in Division I basketball and don't really have a Division I roster. So regardless of what happens for the Musketeers in that game, I don't think it's too meaningful. I want this to serve as a precursor to the Crosstown Shootout preview conversation that will take place later this week. This is a 2-podcast week. You'll get this one, and then you will get the Crosstown Shootout podcast later in the week, probably Wednesday or Thursday. The Crosstown Shootout press conferences will be Wednesday morning. So we will try to get that done for you as soon as possible as well. And if you are listening to this on Monday, you can still take advantage of our Cyber Monday sale. Get 75% off your annual subscription to Musketeer Report. It's the best sale we offer all year long. So if you're on the fence about it or you want to buy it as a gift for someone else, be sure to take advantage of that right now. But let's focus on Xavier for a minute and just talk about what's happened over the last four games. And I think the biggest thing that stands out to me is, and if you've listened to me over the years, especially on the Skinny podcast, you know I don't love using this word, but I think they've found their identity. And I mean that across the board. I could not be more impressed with the job that the staff has done to change things up, make the necessary changes to give themselves a chance, and how well it's played out for this group. I think it starts with the small lineup, of course. You've got Allright at point guard, Malik Messina-Moore at shooting guard, Filip Borovic at small forward, Trey Carroll at the power forward, and then Jovan Milicevic at the center spot. And that right there has been the single biggest difference that they've made that's led to their success over the last four games. I mean, there's no question that getting that offense on the floor, getting Allright at the point guard spot, getting Jovan at the center spot, the stress that the front court of Jovan and Trey Carroll, their ability to play with the ball in their hands, to knock down shots on the perimeter, and Trey also driving past defenders and getting into the paint a little bit, making a few plays there, has really been the biggest reason for the team playing so much better. Now, they've done other things better as well. You can argue that they've found a renewed fight, or maybe not renewed, but maybe for the first time they found a little more fight and competitiveness or what have you. I think a lot of that has to do with them finding more success on the offensive end, playing with more confidence. And when you're playing with more confidence, I think those are the types of the traits that come out in you. And so to me, it's mostly about that. Yes, they are very 3-point reliant. I know Coach Pitino has talked about wanting to find more consistent sources of scoring in the paint and definitely getting to the free throw line more. I think that's something they're going to try to add in. The problem for this team is I think it's going to be difficult to do that because I don't think you have a consistent post presence, and I don't know that one's going to develop. And I don't know that you have guys that are playmakers off the bounce that can win one-on-one matchups and get a lot of paint touches. Now, that being said, I think they're doing a great job of creating 3-point looks and doing some of that stuff to get inside out threes, and the ball movement they've shown has been fantastic. So maybe they will still find some way with a little more off-ball cutting or something to get these guys more opportunities in the lane. But right now, they're definitely very reliant on the 3-point shot, and they look great doing it. They've done a great job of making that their new identity. The no turnovers thing, the lack of turnovers, I should say, has just been astonishing to me. I really was not expecting for this group coming in to be so secure with the ball. I mean, you think about what they have to overcome in terms of all the new players, a new system, a new coach, a change at the point guard spot already. That part has been very impressive to me, that they've been able to limit their turnovers so much. I mean, they just had 5, I believe, in the game against Texas A&M Corpus Christi the other night against a team that, you know, is trying to do some some things to force you into turnovers defensively. And I'm not saying they're great at it, but to only commit 5 turnovers, regardless of what's going on the other side of the court, is impressive to me. And the other part of it is having to adjust on the defensive side. We've already seen, I think everybody pointed out the zone defense at the Charleston Classic, and people liked that a lot because we've seen a huge reluctance to switch to a zone when it feels like it would be an obvious decision. So I think that was appreciated by the fan base, but also they were so aggressive on ball screens initially to start the year, and all of a sudden they're dropping in ball screen coverages at certain times. So they've done a lot of different things here to make what they're doing on the floor fit their personnel. And I always think that's the best way of coaching, but especially in this era where you have the transfer portal and you're trying to fit all these new pieces together on an annual basis, I think it's going to be harder than ever to recruit to your system and your style of play. Not that you shouldn't try, not that it won't be valuable and successful if you're able to do that successfully, but I think there are going to be so many years where you're not able to thread that needle perfectly. A guy doesn't pan out here, you're not able to add the right type of big man or the right type of point guard in a given year. You're not just going to be able to keep grooming, or it's going to be very rare that you're able to groom one over the course of 3 or 4 years and let him learn under someone and then turn the offense over to him or something like that. It's just all different now. And so I think the ability to adjust to the personnel that you have is going to be really important. And so far, I think that's the most encouraging sign that you could have about the Richard Pitino era, is he and his staff have done an incredible job this year of molding what they're doing to fit their personnel. And they're not abandoning the things that they want to do or what they believe in completely. They're still doing a lot of those things, but they have had to make adjustments and concessions in certain areas, and they've been ones that have definitely benefited the team. In terms of individuals, I think Jovan Milicevic to me is the biggest standout. That's the most exciting part of this right now. He scored 14 or more in 6 of 8 games. He's done it in 5 straight now. He's shooting 47% from 3-point range. I think the rebounding showed against West Virginia at the Charleston Classic, and that win was good. He had 7 rebounds in that game, 7 defensive rebounds. All of that stuff is very impressive, but what I can't get over is the way he looks now compared to what he did last year. I mean, there were some signs that he was a skilled big man, but I thought he looked like he was out of shape. I thought he looked like he had no chance defensively, and he's still going to have to prove himself on that end. He's yet to really be tested by a lot of like Big East quality big men yet, but he's held his own to this point enough. And I mean, Xavier's 2-point defense obviously isn't very good because they have a lack of rim protection there when he's playing the center spot, but they're a much better team with him at the center spot than without. And the way he's improved his body and become a very legitimate threat on the offensive end, mostly because of his 3-point shooting ability, but he's not just a complete stiff spot up 3-point shooter either. He's a smart basketball player and helps out all around on the offensive end. I'm so impressed by him, and he's a sophomore. So we've talked a lot about that with this year, and what you're looking at is that sophomore class, the guys with remaining eligibility, developing into something that you feel is worth building into next year. And Jovan, without a doubt, is top of that list right now, in my opinion. I think he has been an incredible, pleasant surprise. I mean, when I was doing the power rankings for the Xavier roster in the offseason, I had him all the way at the bottom. And to be honest, when I was talking to people in the offseason during the summer and saying, like who's looking good, not once was anyone mentioning his name as one of the best players. I heard Malik Messina Moore. I heard Trey Carroll. I heard Gabriel Posado a lot. I never heard Jovan's name come up. And right now, I mean, maybe you could make the argument that Trey Carroll's a little bit more of an all-around player. Maybe you'd go with him as the best player. But to me, Jovan's the guy on the offensive end. He's the dangerous one. He's the one that scares you if you're the opposing team, shooting the ball from 3-point range the way he is at the center spot. The other guy is the emergence of All Right. I think him playing point guard and being so steady at it, in addition to bringing that 3-point shooting spark into the offensive rotation to pair with Jovan and make the offense even that much more dangerous, that much more spread out and hard to guard. That's exciting too. He's shooting 54% from 3-point range right now, and he's another one of those sophomores along with Jovan. So another guy that you can hope on and dream on. I talked about it in the last podcast I recorded after they suffered those tough losses, the back-to-back 19-point losses to Santa Clara and Iowa. I said the most disheartening part of all of it right now is that there isn't anything to dream on going forward. There weren't the guys with eligibility weren't looking like players that you could build something with going forward to next season. Well, Jovan and All Right have all of a sudden given you that. They are looking like guys that, we'll see what they do in Big East play, obviously, but they are looking like guys that definitely have a chance, at least, to develop into legitimate Big East weapons. I just, again, All Right's efficiency and Jovan's efficiency on the offensive end is just, that's the exciting part of it. I don't think you expect guys like that to be your go-to guys on a Big East roster. If you can put a go-to scorer or two alongside of them, for instance, if Gabriel Pizzotto ends up being that guy, these two get even more dangerous because I think their value is in their efficiency and not necessarily having to be huge volume guys. So we'll see how that all plays out. But I think you can really start to piece together a roster for next season and see how this thing could look a lot better when you start thinking of how that all works together. Those guys maybe being more of a role as opposed to being your top scoring options, even though they've done a great job of stepping up here for Xavier over the last few games. The other individual guy that I would point out is a guy that I've gone back and forth on in terms of his value at the Big East level, how he would fit in, and that's Filip Borovichinen. I really like the idea of Filip being a star in his role. Right now, he leads the team in rebounds, assists, and steals, so he's kind of already doing that. But I think you saw, like against Texas A&M Corpus Christi especially, where he had all the rebounds, if he can focus on those things and really become great at them, the offensive rebounding, rebounding on both ends, but being a threat on the offensive glass, being a real playmaker with his ability to get into the lane and handle the ball at his size, he's going to get some interesting matchups at times. If he can really become a setup man and playmaker for his teammates and be focused more on that even than he is scoring, I think he becomes a more valuable piece. And then the steals too, obviously he's done a great job defensively with his length and getting deflections. If he just plays with a really high motor there, I don't know that he can ever be a scorer at the Big East level, at least like a big scorer. But if he does those other things really well, then I think he's definitely got a lot of value to a Big East team. And for the Xavier team this year especially, they're really going to need him. With him and Jovan, again, this is one where I go back to looking at what Filip looked like last year for New Mexico. Played a lot of minutes, not a bad player. Again, we're talking about him being more of a role player, but he's already playing better right now for Xavier than he did last season at New Mexico. And in theory, this should be harder. Now, I know they're playing bye games. It's a lot of mid-major competition, so maybe it will get worse for him when we get into Big East play. But I think what it speaks to is the player development side of this coaching staff with Richard Pitino and his staff. The job they've done with Filip Borovichinen and Jovan Milicevic, two guys who are in year 2 with this coaching staff, at least most of this coaching staff, certainly the head coach. I think that speaks volumes about their ability to get guys better and help them become impact players, because I was not high on Borovichinen and Milicevic. I thought those were two guys that Richard Pitino was bringing with him, mostly because you had to fill out a roster somehow. He probably was able to get them for a reasonable price, and they knew his system already. So at least it's almost like bringing some of your own continuity with you. I thought that was the importance of having those guys. I really didn't think they were going to be two of the most important players on the team. And right now, that's the situation they find themselves in. I think they're doing a pretty good job of it. So the player development part of that would be another thing that excites me if I'm a Xavier fan. I think that all brings us to the question that I've been getting over the last maybe 3 to 4 days, talking to Xavier fans about this. Even my dad and I were talking about it a little bit this morning when I dropped my kid off over there. How sustainable is this? Right? They're making a lot of 3-point shots. How sustainable is all of it? I think taking really good care of the basketball, passing the ball really well, and making open shots is not a bad recipe for offense. That's what they're doing right now, essentially. They're doing it with skilled players. They're doing it with guys that can continue to do that. Now, I wrote it in my recap of the Texas A&M Corpus Christi game, I believe. Is All Right going to continue to shoot over 50% from three as his volume increases? Probably not. Is Jovan going to come down to earth a little bit more? Probably. But also, like, Malik Messina Moore has not shot the ball well yet. Filip Borovichinen can certainly shoot better. He's not going to take a ton of threes, I don't think, but he can shoot better than what he's shot to this point. He started off on a terrible cold stretch. So I don't know that the three-point shooting necessarily has to come down a ton. I don't know that you're going to get like a lot of nights where you hit 16 threes, which they did in 2 out of 3 games. But I think you can continue to be a good three-point shooting team. I think they're going to have to try. I think that's clearly their best path to success. And when you're getting 43% of your points from three-point range, you're going to have some bad nights when the shots aren't falling. That's just going to be the way it's going to go. They're going to have some inconsistent nights on the offensive end. Defensively, I have some concerns about them guarding bigger and more athletic teams. That 2-point percentage defense is not a good sign, and I'm not sure that they're going to be able to turn that around real well. They just don't seem very quick on the perimeter, and inside they really have no rim protection when they're playing their best lineup. When they bring in Anthony Robinson or Pop Njai, it gives you a little bit more, but it's mostly in theory right now, more so than actual practice. Those guys have not been moving a ton of shots. Like they help with it. It makes a difference, but it's not like it's been enough to offset the lack of offense when they're in the game and the change in overall energy and flow for this team. So I do have concerns about the 2-point percentage defense getting better. I'm not sure that that's going to happen, and that is an actual problem for this team. I think where it comes down to for me, to sum this all up, I think them playing better is sustainable, but I don't know that they continue to get the results they're getting from a win-loss perspective and maybe a shooting percentage perspective. That might drop a little bit, and again, they might find it hard to win games still because they don't get to the free throw line and they don't have good 2-point percentage defense. There is some real concern still about the high-end talent on this team when it comes to matching up with other teams in the Big East. All of that stuff is still real, but I think they can continue to play the way that they've played, which is looking like they're playing harder, the good ball movement, the good style of offense, the fun offense where they're moving it quickly and taking good in rhythm 3-point shots and they're shooting well from 3-point range. I think that's legitimate. I think they've found the way that they can play and have success. And I think that part of it will continue. In fact, they could even get better at that stuff. It just might not go how you'd like it to go from a results perspective. And I think everyone is mostly prepared for that after the way that the season started. So it's been a positive turnaround to see what they've done over the last 4 games. This week is a big one with the crosstown shootout. And again, we will talk more about the crosstown shootout later this week. But let's bring in Paul Fritschner now to talk more about this Xavier team. All right. And there he is, Paul Fritschner, joining me for this one. Paul, first of all, thank you for coming on the podcast again. It hasn't been too long since we last spoke. But I wanted to ask you about this turnaround for the Xavier team, because the last time we were talking, things were not looking great for the Musketeers. They're obviously playing much better basketball right now. What's been your favorite part of this turnaround. And I want to preface this by saying, like, don't do the Fritschner thing where you mentioned like 12 great things that are going on right now, because there are multiple things you could choose. Give me the one that really stands out and is like the thing that you think is a really good sign for this team.
Yeah, so to preface this, I haven't heard what you already recorded, so I'm wondering if we said the same thing. But I think it's been the lack of turnovers. I think it's been ball security, paired with the fact that they have the second highest assist rate in the country, and the fact that they're passing and distributing as well as they are, and they're not turning the ball over. I know they haven't played the stiffest competition yet, but to still take care of the basketball, to only have I don't care who you're playing, to only have 5 turnovers in a 40-minute Division I college basketball game is a significant thing for me, especially when you're assisting as much as you are. They're seeing the court, they're spreading the ball around better. The ball movement to me is what stands out, because you can see the way that they're getting the open three. It's not just that they're making the threes, which, yeah, that's nice. They're shooting it a lot better than we thought they were going to coming into the year. But the way that they're getting the open shots is what is really encouraging to me, and taking care of the basketball and not giving extra possessions away. I was afraid of that coming into the year, because there were question marks about the point guard play. Roddy Anderson had the year off. Could All Right translate up to this level? I think so far you're starting to see some of those answers play their way out. And the fact that Xavier is, at least to this point through the first month of the season, taking care of the ball is a top 10% in the country, that's outstanding to me.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you in terms of what a surprise that part of it has been. Just because, let's assume that we knew they were good ball handlers and skilled players, and we thought they were going to be like decent at that to begin with because of who the personnel was. Paul, it's so many moving pieces. You have all these new players trying to play together. You've got an entirely new staff, and let's not act like everything's gone perfectly for them. Like, they had some really bad stretches offensively through the first few games, and yet the turnovers never became a problem. That is stunning to me. It really is shocking. I tried to ask Coach Pitino about that after the last game during the press conference. I was like, does that surprise you at all? And he was just kind of like, well, we have skilled guys. And, fair enough. Like, I guess that is why they're not turning it over, because you have a guy like Filip Borovichinen at 6'9" who can really handle it. And you have a guy like Jovan who is a smart passer, a smart basketball player, and is comfortable with the ball in his hands on the perimeter. I get all of that, but it is just amazing to me because so many teams do have problems with turnovers. And I mean, even Xavier's team last year, which I would have thought was set up to be more steady at the point guard spot and take better care of the basketball. Both teams are trying to play fast on the offensive end. I'm shocked by how well this one takes care of the ball, Paul.
Well, and especially looking back at that Georgia game last week, Xavier only had 8 turnovers in that game. Georgia is 15th in the country at forcing turnovers. Right? It's not just that they're limiting turnovers in their guarantee games, in their bye games. They only had 8 turnovers against Georgia. They had 10 turnovers against West Virginia. I think it was 11 or 12 against Iowa. They haven't had more than 13 turnovers in a game this season, and even 13 feels like an outlier at this point. So if you're going to keep taking care of the ball like that, you're going to keep setting yourself up for success, because you're just going to create more possessions for yourself. You're not giving it away. You're not shooting yourself in the foot.
Yeah, how surprised are you? Again, I mean, we just kind of talked about it, that it is surprising, it's great and all that, but the fact that the point guard position was such a question mark coming in, and it hasn't really worked out great for them. I mean, they had to change from their starting point guard pretty much right away and go to All Right. And, I think All Right's done a great job, but going in, we thought he was more of a scorer and maybe not a natural point guard. So how surprised are you that without a point guard, they've been able to make this work?
Yeah, I think, again, and this goes back to something that I said in the preseason, maybe this is too cliche, I don't know, but I think it does really speak to the types of guys that these players are, because they're all willing to do whatever it takes to win. And I know that comes off as cliche, but look at a guy like Filip Borovichinen, who was clearly trying to do way too much in the first handful of games, and then now has settled into more of the, hey, I have a role, I need to play that role, and I need to do more of what I did at New Mexico. And he comes off a 15-rebound game against Texas A&M Corpus Christi, where he was a couple rebounds short of the Cintas Center record. He has a double-double. He's playing more within himself. I say that because I think you're seeing this group of guys be more malleable to the coaching and to what we just need to go out there and do whatever we're told to do to try and win games. All Right slid right into that taking over the point guard duties. And I think it's been a testament to the type of player that he is, that we were wondering, is he undersized? Could he translate up? And again, they haven't played a ton of high major competition, so I think there are still a lot of questions to be answered with a lot of this. But we've seen enough. I mean, we're already a full month into the season. We've seen enough that we can at least start to answer some of those questions. And I've been impressed with All and what his shot making and also his ability to take care of the basketball and see the floor.
Yeah, Paul, I think, everyone understands the concept of like someone who comes into the workplace around you or that you're around every day and you have to work with, who has energy and a positive attitude, is a lot easier to be around. You want those people around you. It's a lot easier to work with those people than people who are the opposite of that and are a drag in the workplace or in the locker room and what have you. I think everyone's always understood that concept, and that's an obvious thing that you can transfer to sports teams. I do wonder, to your point about these guys and who they are, and like you can sense their kind of upbeat good-naturedness in post-game press conferences. I think fans have already gotten that sense from them, and it's made the rough start, and now the turnaround obviously has helped greatly, but their attitudes and the types of guys that they seem to be has helped the fan base rally behind them a little bit easier. I do wonder that in this new era where everyone's quote-unquote mercenary, you've got all these new guys coming together, and it feels to me like locker rooms would be, one, very fragile, and two, there's a lot less earned chemistry, a lot less earned continuity in there. Like what you're doing for a year, you're all kind of like lying and being fake about, because you all realize, hey, by next spring, this whole locker room is going to look different again, right? We're all probably going to do what's best for us. And so I wonder if, to your point about the type of guys that they are, maybe there's a little more value to that in this current era that we're in than there's ever been, because of the nature of the locker rooms and how transient and transactional this whole process is now. I do wonder if you have a group of guys that are willing to come together and are willing to be coachable, that you can do something like this Xavier team has just done, which is completely turn around the way that they're playing.
Yeah, and if you've been listening to the Patino Show, we've been rolling through the Player Spotlight series and really meeting all of these guys. Today's episode was with Jovan, and I think you're starting to see, I mean, the Phillip episode, right, where him and Coach Patino are going back and forth about the fouling up two situation, which, as an aside, was laugh out loud funny that exact situation did come up against Georgia. I can only imagine what Phillip must have been thinking there. But yeah, I think that personality is coming out, and I don't think it's nothing. I really don't. I mean, you could call me corny, you can say it doesn't matter, but I don't think it's nothing that this team truly all gets along, loves playing with each other, and is trying to do whatever they can to win these games, from a sacrificial standpoint within their own game of, okay, maybe I need to change the way I do this to be able to help this. And I think you're starting to see that come out, because in game 1, game 2, game 3, the Santa Clara game, a clear, delineation between the first couple weeks and then what has happened since. You've seen a much different team. And I think those 3 or 4 days in between Santa Clara and Iowa are what really turned this program. Now, again, what does it look like going forward? Has this been a hot stretch? Is this sustainable? I'm sure we'll talk about that. But yeah, to me, I do think the quality of these guys off the court and how they've come together has translated to what you've seen on the court.
Yeah, so I mean, we're already getting off tangent and going longer than I expected here, but you bring up the sustainability of it. I was just talking about that before you came on. What parts of this that I think will continue, what parts, might fall apart a little bit as you get into Big East play, face better athletes, face stiffer competition. What are your thoughts on what we've seen over the last 3-4 games, wherever you want to draw that line, and continue it into the future? Like, how do you see this playing out? Do you think they can continue this?
I don't think the Big East right now is anything to scoff at as far as stacking some wins. I think going into the season, you looked at St. John's and UConn and Creighton as an 0-6 mark to the season. I think that you had we had just written off those games as 0-6, and what could you do with the other 14? Creighton right now, if we're just calling it like it is not an NCAA tournament team. There's plenty of time to turn things around. but they have not started off like an NCAA tournament team. They've dealt with injury issues, all of that. They don't have any significant wins. St. John's has looked fragile. UConn has absolutely looked like a national title contender at the top of the conference. But the rest of the way, I mean, can Butler keep it up? What's Villanova going to look like? Georgetown, they really dropped the ball over the weekend down in Orlando. So looking at sustainability going forward, I mean, obviously the big question this week is what's going to happen on Friday night in the Crosstown Shootout. But I think we can say that this team is a pretty good three-point shooting team, which I don't know if any of us were expecting going into the year. But sustainability will come from what happens on the interior of this team. Can they get anything within the paint? Because you can't keep, eventually somebody is going to adjust to the perimeter. And if when those teams adjust to that, if you can't adjust inside and get something, I'm not saying you have to be a top 100 team, but if you can be a top 180 team in the interior, that completely changes the outlook in my mind for this team, Rick, because right now as we're sitting here, Xavier's 352nd out of 365 teams in 2-point field goal percentage. That's where the sustainability of all this falls apart.
Yeah, I'll share it with you. Apologies to the listeners because they just heard me say it. But basically the gist of what the conclusion I kind of came to as I was talking about the sustainability of this all is I think them playing better like they have been for the last 3 or 4 games, this style of play, it's more fun to watch. They're getting good shots off on the offensive end. They're shooting well from 3. They play that small ball style. They have this kind of identity now. I think they can continue doing that. I don't think that's fake. I don't think it's a fluke. I think they can continue to play that way. I don't know that it means they're going to continue to get the results you want as a fan or the results they have over the last few games that they've won. I think it's still going to be hard for this team to win games in Big East play against the teams that are bigger, more athletic, all of those things have more imposing front courts. And it's because of what you mentioned. We know a bad 2-point defense usually doesn't lead to good things. We know teams that don't get to the free throw line, that doesn't typically lead to great things. Teams that can't score consistently from 2-point range, that doesn't lead to great things. So again, I think what they're doing is sustainable. I don't know if it means the results will follow that. And I think we might have been, with our original predictions to start the season, we might have been fairly close still, like, 10, 11, 12 wins, whatever range that is. That probably still feels about right to me with this group, even now with the way they're playing. I wouldn't bump them down to that 7 or 8 win category that I had them in after the back-to-back 19-point losses. I think they've kind of made me feel better about that scenario and the worst case scenario happening. But I still think it is going to be hard for them to rack up wins. And you mentioned, you're talking about the Big East and how it looks this year. The one thing is, I've heard some people say like the Big East is soft this year, so that could be a saving grace for Xavier. And I think it's soft in the sense that there's not as much separation at the top. There aren't 3, 4, 5 teams that clearly look like you don't have much of a chance against them. But on the flip side of it this year, the worst team right now is DePaul at 115 in KenPom. And Georgetown is also behind Xavier. They're at 87, Xavier's 83rd. But Paul, there's no, 2023, 2024 DePaul team that was ranked 304th, or that Georgetown that year was ranked almost 200th. There's no last year Seton Hall team that's ranked 204th, at least not yet. So, I mean, there isn't the easy wins or the teams you feel really good about beating right now if you're Xavier either. You can look at it and say, the Big East is kind of soft, but if you end up being the softest of that soft group and everyone's kind of around the same, it still could be tough sledding. So again, it's a lot of wait and see. I know that's kind of weak from us as prognosticators or trying to make predictions, but I think the fun thing for Xavier fans right now is this group is playing better, and I don't think the turnaround they've made is fake in terms of finding their identity and playing to their strengths.
Yeah, at the very least, there's more confidence around this team. At the very least, they have something that they can go out there every single night when they play and say, okay, we're going to try and do this. And maybe we're not going to do it better than the other team on this given night because the other team might have just more skill, more talent, whatever it might be. But at least, as opposed to where it looked like they were just wandering aimlessly in the wilderness for the first 3 games, credit to the coaching staff for adjusting, trying to do things on the fly, changing the starting lineups, throwing some token defenses out there, doing some things that they needed to do to at least get the most out of this team that they can.
Yep. One more quick thought before I let you go, Paul. What is your take on the backup center situation right now when Jovan Milicevic comes off the court?
I still think the answer, if you're talking about somebody for the future, I think I still lean Anthony Robinson just because it feels like he has the athleticism and the build that if you can develop him, you get something there. Pop Njai has the height. You can't teach height, but I really haven't seen enough from him in any way to say that he would be the answer, unless you say you just want the tall body in there to try and block a shot. I think, but Anthony Robinson has to play stronger, has to play tougher, has to rebound. I mean, when he's grabbing a ball, sometimes it's like it slips out of his hands, right? He's not. It's like his hand strength gripping the ball. It's getting knocked out too easily. Those are things that can't happen. I'd like to see Anthony Robinson get to a point where he's earning consistent minutes. I mean, he had 12 and 8 on Friday night. Maybe that's a jump start. Who knows?
Yeah, how much do you read into that performance against Texas A&M Corpus Christi? Is it just like, I mean, because a lot of it did come in the second half with the game out of hand. That's why he was in there, in addition to Jovan's foul trouble. But like, did you think that was a step in the right direction, or did you think it was kind of meaningless production in a game that was already out of hand?
Well, I don't want to say it was totally meaningless, because he very easily could have gone out there and had 4 points, 3 fouls, and 2 rebounds in.
We've already seen
12,
that, right?
In 12 minutes, and you would have sat there and thought, okay, well, that's just about what he's shown. And so the fact that, yeah, it was weaker competition, but he took advantage of it when he had to me, that's at least a step in the right direction.
Definitely. Yeah. No, that was my takeaway too. It's like, it's not super meaningful, but I'd also say it's not completely meaningless either, because it could be the opposite. And we've already seen that from him against low competition. So, all right, Paul, good stuff as always. Thanks so much for doing this. We are going to talk again this week. We didn't talk at all about the crosstown shootout here because we've still got a lot to sort through. There's another game to be played here. We're recording this on Monday before the St. Francis game has even happened. So we'll get through the press conferences this week with the crosstown shootout. We'll fully break down that game and give it its proper respect.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on, Rick.
Thanks, Paul. All right, good stuff from Paul Fritschner as always. Be sure to check out his rebound rundown and also the Richard Pitino podcast that he is doing. Also, if you're listening to this on Cyber Monday, we still have our 75% off sale going at Musketeer Report. If you've been thinking about signing up, or maybe you wanted to get this as a gift for someone, this is the best time to do it. It's the best deal we offer all year long. 75% off your annual subscription. Sign up now at musketeerreport.com, but you only have until midnight tonight on Cyber Monday if you're listening to this. So make sure to take advantage of that right now. Thank you all for listening.